Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Now, before we dive in today's episode, I want to talk about something truly valuable, protecting your financial future with gold. It's called diversification. Now, for that, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're the real deal with 5-star service and a sterling reputation. So give them a call today. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Trust me, you'll thank yourself in the future. Now let's get to the show. Results may vary. Consult with your financial professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Very, very loaded program, impactful program, lots of important hot issues that are going to affect your lives. And so let's get started. Thank you for being out there, by the way. I listened very carefully to President Trump's speech today. First of all, it was fantastic. His substance on the economy and on the border. He has a charisma. He's got a jocularity that is really just terrific. And of course, he's spot on. And I was making a list of his economic policies, many of which we already know because he's been talking about it for some time, unlike Harris. And I want to be honest with you, America, it reminds me of Ronald Reagan's tax cuts. We had the greatest economic growth since the Industrial Revolution under Reagan, and since Reagan, the greatest economic growth under Donald Trump. What Trump is proposing is not radical, despite what the media say today, and I want you to understand that the media used to call the Reagan economic program Reaganomics. Remember all that? Some of you do, some of you don't. And we had an explosion of economic growth. The economy literally grew over an 8-year period, the economy, the American economy, over 30%. Over 30%. We'd never seen so much prosperity. And but for the pandemic, the same with Trump. And when we were coming out of the pandemic, we saw an explosion of growth, low inflation, 1.4%. Imagine that. And then the Democrats step in with trillions of dollars in spending. So let's discuss this rationally with a little bit of historical context. Number one, the Democrats will never cut spending. The only spending they cut is when it comes to the United States military and Veterans Affairs. Also when it comes to the border. Otherwise, they will not cut spending. Massive redistribution of wealth. Massive, phony, radical left-wing programs that enrich their oligarchs and enrich their left-wing organizations. And so you have this Green New Deal, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, trillions of dollars, hundreds of billions, we don't even know where they went, over $40 billion to hook up the internet all over the country, including people who don't have it. So far, they've hooked up nobody. $7 to $8 billion for electric vehicle charging stations, of which they built 8. They're never going to stop spending. And I'll tell you why. Unfortunately, it's now built into the system since Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal. That is, the Senate Democrats are never going to go along with cutting spending, except in those areas I already mentioned. And so you need 60 votes. You need 60 votes to pass a budget if they choose to filibuster it. You get budgets that come out of the House of Representatives where they're cutting spending, and then Schumer blocks them. And so there's not a lot we can do about it. And so when I hear these economists, many of our friends on Fox, on other networks and so forth, say, well, the Republicans and the Democrats, none of them want to cut spending, that's simply a lie. We have House Republicans who are constantly trying to cut spending, some more than others. And it is killed in the United States Senate by the Democrats. And by the way, it only takes 40-some-odd Democrats to kill it. And they have a simple majority right now that kills it. So they're not going to cut spending. And this, by the way, is going to one day crash our economy. But that's not the point I want to address. Trump is talking about slashing the capital gains tax. Ronald Reagan did that. Trump is talking about slashing taxes across the board, including the top level, middle, and lower. Ronald Reagan did that too. Trump is talking about companies in America who invest in heavy equipment because it's very expensive, that they'll be able to amortize it within 1 year. Reagan did the same thing. These are very, very important policies that will build up our industries, that will build up manufacturing, that will strengthen our industrial base, that will strengthen our economy, and create tremendous, well-paying American jobs right here. That is what Trump is doing. This pinprick stuff that Kamala Harris talks about, well, if this company does this, if this company does that, it never works, and they don't do it anyway. She's talking about a massive increase in the capital gains tax. You know what's going to happen if there's a massive increase in the capital gains tax? Companies are going overseas. They're either going to move their headquarters overseas, but they're certainly going to move their manufacturing overseas. So think about that. Under Kamala Harris economy, more jobs are moved overseas and more illegal aliens come into the country and take jobs that exist. This is crazy. This is crazy. So when you have open borders, when you're not deporting anybody, when you're flying into the country 1 million illegal aliens, and by flying them into the country, certifying them as legal aliens on a pathway to citizenship, that's what they're doing. It is so diabolical. Undermining American workers, undermining American wages. You're destroying the ability to assimilate cultures and other populations of diverse backgrounds all over the world into our own culture. That's what's going on in Springfield, Ohio, despite all the lies and from the left and all the propaganda. That's what's going on in every city in America. That's what's going on in Chicago. And by the way, in hour 3, we're going to have our man Lee Zeldin on the program to talk about what's happening with Venezuelan gangs in New York. And it's not just New York, it's Chicago too. Chicago has a massive gang problem. Domestic gangs now facing off against Venezuelan gangs, for God's sakes. We didn't have this problem 4 years ago. We didn't have it in Chicago. We didn't have it in New York. We didn't have it in Philadelphia or L.A., and we have it now. And now she's going to take a trip to the border, and we're all supposed to get excited because she might burp up a couple of rehearsed phrases? Come on, America. Either we save our country or it's not going to be saved. Now, what about tariffs? Trump is not a tariff king. He doesn't put tariffs on everything. Ronald Reagan was more free market than not. And he used to boast about this. I remember I worked in his campaigns and I served in his administration for 8 years. But Reagan put tariffs on goods, electronics, coming from Japan. They were destroying our television industry, and they pretty much wound up doing that, our electronics industry and so forth. There had been negotiations and negotiations, but they wouldn't budge. So he placed the most onerous tariffs imaginable on many of these Japanese electronic products to try and save our electronics industry. Trump is saying the same thing, that the communist Chinese are destroying our farmlands. We now literally have a negative negative balance of trade when it comes to farm products. We've never had a negative balance of trade when it's come to farm products. And so what Trump is saying is we got to save our agricultural communities. What's Biden doing? Nothing. Zero. Busy subsidizing illegal aliens. Trump is a common sense guy. He's more conservative than most Republicans who've served in the Oval Office. He's telling the industries that are building auto plants south of the border, you don't get to build auto plants in Mexico and then ship them 20 miles into Texas, into Arizona, into New Mexico, and so forth, ripping us off like this, destroying American workforce, American industry by playing a game, by playing a system. You don't get to do that. And so he says, no. What has Biden and Harris done about it? Nothing. Zero. This electric vehicle stuff on top of the open borders, on top of taxes that will send American business and jobs overseas, on top of illegal aliens taking American jobs that exist in this country and driving down wages. This isn't a market system. This is a government run amok. A government industrial policy that Biden and Harris are running, that the Democrats are running, that are destroying our industrial center, our manufacturing, blue-collar jobs and white-collar jobs, now and in the future. And with their spending, with inflation that's going to continue to go through the roof, there are respites, of course, with interest rates and inflation, because monetary policy set by the Fed, they jump in, okay, we're going to cut half a point. Okay, so there's a sudden decrease in interest rates. That's not going to last. It can't last. You can't have $36 trillion on record debt, off record debt when you include entitlement programs of $300 trillion in an economy that creates approximately $17.5 to $18 trillion in wealth every year. It's unsustainable. But you don't kill the golden goose that lays the golden eggs either. You've got to grow. You've got to create prosperity. The American people need to live. They need to survive. And despite all this spending, I know this is a lot to digest, but 3 hours is all I have. They're slashing the military budget. Do you know Kamala Harris has not voted as a senator once for the military budget? Do you know she never voted for an increase in the salaries of any military personnel? Are you aware of this? I don't know why the Trump campaign or the RNC or somebody's not talking about it, so I'll talk about it. I am telling you that Kamala Harris never voted for a salary increase for a single man or woman in uniform. In any uniform in our military services. Not once. Voted against it every single time. But she voted for more money for the bureaucracy. She voted for more money for illegal immigrants. She voted for more money, you name it. She voted money, 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 money. Comes to the military, no. Ladies and gentlemen, these are not our values. This is not our belief system. They are literally destroying our finances, gutting our economy, opening our borders to change the entire nature of the country. This is what they're doing. Now, one other thing. I know it's a lot. It's okay. We got a lot to do today. She's going to go to the border. They say, oh, how exciting. Who gives a crap? She finally comes out of the closet. Oh, there's Kamala. As I've been saying now for months, she's playing rope-a-dope. Oh, and she'll say something that doesn't mean anything. It'll either be a flat-out lie or puffery. Listen, they keep talking about this phony bipartisan bill. I want you to listen to me carefully. I reposted this. It's very important. Very, very important. Kamala Harris says she would sign the so-called bipartisan immigration bill. It's good to know. It's good to know. Here are 6 reasons. Just 6 that I came up with out of 300 and some pages in this bill. The bill, number 1, was never bipartisan. It was negotiated in secret, and upon its release was immediately rejected by the overwhelming majority of Republican senators once they read it. Not a single House Republican supported it. So how is this bipartisan? Number two, the bill would make catch and release. You catch somebody in the United States, they manage to get here, and you release them into the United States. The law of the land, part of our federal immigration code, making stay in Mexico, which Trump wants to put back in place, impossible. Because you would have to undo the statute. And what did I just say? The Senate Democrats would never allow that, and they don't need a majority to stop it. So catch and release would be federalized as a part of federal law. Stay in Mexico would become impossible. That's number two. Number three, the bill would require work permits for illegal aliens. Work permits for illegal aliens? They're supposed to be deported. No. They would get work permits as a matter of federal law. Number four, the bill would require the provision of taxpayer-funded lawyers for illegal aliens. 20 million illegal aliens, every one of them would have a right to a taxpayer-funded lawyer to gum up the works and make enforcing the border and deportation impossible. That's in the so-called bipartisan bill. Up to 5,000 illegal aliens a day would be permitted. That's almost 2 million illegal aliens a year, not even including the gotaways. And the bill would require payment of billions of dollars to sanctuary cities and pro-illegal alien non-governmental organizations. What do you think, folks? She said she would sign that bill on day one. That's the phony bipartisan bill. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The cracks in our economy are widening by the day. We've got a labor market that's cooling faster than expected. Unemployment jumped to the highest since the end of 2021. The market could be in free fall any day as investors panic over a potential recession. Now, some bank stocks are getting hammered as fears of a downturn grow. Even the Fed is talking about rate cuts to prop things up. In uncertain times like these, you need a solid plan for your wealth. That's where gold comes in. It's been the ultimate safe haven for as long as we've used money. And when it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're a top-rated American gold company and can help you protect your hard-earned money. Call Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit and to see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. Don't wait. Call 800-900-8000 today. That's 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. The Federal Communications Commission. Does that mean anything to you? Well, it really should. In the 1930s, it was set up to distribute broadcast licenses. And we have many significant radio stations, historic stations with 50,000 watt reaches, some with 100,000 watt reaches. And of course, as the country grew and more stations were needed, more stations were added. And so these licenses, we talk about people who own stations and so forth, but they have to get these licenses. And they have to get approval from the FCC for these licenses. These stations have to be run in the public good. From time to time, I've actually thought about, as a litigator myself of long standing, of filing complaints against certain stations. You never know, I may. But something's happening today, last week, and this week at the Federal Communications Commission with a majority Democrat commissioners that's going to affect conservative talk radio and, in some sense, this program. And so I've asked Brendan Carr, one of the Republican commissioners, there's 5 commissioners, 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans, to explain what's going to happen to your airwaves. This is Mark Levin with an urgent message. We are living in grave and dark economic times that are going to get worse. We just saw an abysmal jobs report while unemployment shot up to the highest level since the end of 2021. Meanwhile, the stock market looks like a gamble. Many banks are getting crushed as recession fears mount. The S&P Banks Index fell 2.4% in a single day. That's a lot. Regional banks fell nearly 3%. That's even more. These are bad signs. Even the Fed is talking about rate cuts. You need to protect your wealth. That's where diversification and gold comes in. It's been a bedrock of wealth preservation for centuries. And the best company I know of is Advantage Gold. Their experts can help you protect your savings from economic chaos. Call now, 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit and see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Don't wait. Call now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
America's most powerful conservative voice. The Mark Levin Show. Dial in now. 877-381-3811.
Brendan Carr is one of 5 FCC commissioners, one of 2 Republicans. And something's going on at the FCC this week, that is enormously problematic for conservative talk radio as far as I'm concerned, and it affects a number of stations that currently run my program. Mr. Carr, welcome to the program. I'm raising the issue of what used to be called Intercom, which is now Audacity. They own over 200 stations. Can you tell us what's taking place now?
Yeah, back in March of this year, a George Soros-backed group filed with the FCC to take over those former stations. So it's 200 local radio stations spread across 40 different markets. And earlier this year, it was reported that the FCC was going to approve this transaction without even doing a vote of the commission. And actually, Senator Ted Cruz wrote the FCC a letter and called the current Democrat leadership out for that. And it's been reported now that that decision has been brought up for a commission-level vote. And as you noted, there's 3 Democrats on the commission, 2 Republicans. And the New York Post has a story, Lydia Moynihan, that's reporting that the commission voted 3-2 last Wednesday to approve the transaction. For my part, what I can tell you without, revealing non-public information yet is that I'm a very hard no on this for a pretty simple reason. We have a process that we have to deal with these types of transactions, and the FCC hasn't followed it. Instead, we have fast-tracked this to, in my view, enable this Soros-backed group to get a hold of these stations and get control of them much more quickly than they would have if the FCC followed the normal process.
Now, this is supposed to be an independent agency. It's been around since the 30s. It's involved in a very, very important aspect of American life and lifestyle, the issuing of licenses for broadcasting. People don't realize that while there are radio station owners, the FCC has significant regulatory authority, licensing authority, that stations need to be owned in the public interest. So it has a review process that's been in place for a very long time. And in this case, you have George Soros and his management company that is, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, that now is going to own 40% or the majority of this company, Audacity. And furthermore, under the existing FCC rules, foreign company ownership of U.S. radio stations is not supposed to exceed 25%. So he's got foreign money involved. And there's supposed to be also a national security process, a review process. Am I right about most of this?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So what makes this deal different than a traditional purchase is that the financing that the Soros Group has put together has excessive foreign money involved. So if you have more than 25% foreign ownership, you get taken off the normal review process and you go through a national security review where national security agencies, not the FCC, national security agencies look at where that foreign money is coming from, and they run a 6 month to 1 year process to make sure there's no problem here. So this isn't like the Soroses themselves. This isn't even the Soroses' money. It's that they put a conglomerate together to buy this, where they have admitted to the FCC that there's excessive foreign ownership. What they're saying is, look, give us control of these stations now. We promise to wall off the foreign ownership money for the time being. Then we'll come back to the FCC down the road to run the 6 month to 1 year process. The commission itself has never voted to approve a transaction where we've got the cart before the horse, where we haven't actually gone through that foreign ownership review. Now, is there going to be something nefarious there? I doubt it, but I don't know. I don't know because we're not running the normal process here. We're skipping it.
Well, what's nefarious is you're not running the normal process. That's number one. Number two, these are American radio stations. And now you're going to have a significant amount of foreign money involved in the ownership of American radio stations. And I'm sure the entire purpose is to make sure that foreign influence, among other things, is not affecting local broadcasting, is not affecting, free speech in this country. Now, why are the commissioners, or several of the Democrat commissioners, why are they bending over backwards to do this for the Soros Management Fund before the election?
Well,
what is their explanation?
When I was preparing to come on the show, I looked on X, formerly Twitter, and I saw that just today that Alexander Soros had just posted that he was meeting today with Governor Walz in his New York City home. And what's interesting to me is, a lot of these 200 stations, some of them are just, music or news, but there's a number of conservative outlets that are on there, as you indicated, including your show. I mean, at least 4 stations that I've seen so far carry your show. So if people are out
there... By the way, one of them has already canceled my show. We just got notice 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so Gainesville, Florida, Wichita, Kansas, Philadelphia.
No, Philadelphia, the big one, WPHT.
Yeah. PHT, yep, that's part of the transaction. And then Spartanburg.
And by the way, PHT, Commissioner, is one of the original stations, WCAU, part of William Paley Broadcasting. I'm from Philadelphia. I know all about the history of it. So that's part of this Audacity transaction.
Yep, you're exactly right. And what's so interesting is the other side of this coin. So when a bunch of conservative buyers wanted to buy some Florida radio stations a year or so ago, the left was up in arms. Democrats, cried out that the FCC had to block the sale to conservative buyers, in the Democrats' words, because they were worried they would influence election outcomes. There was Democrat members of Congress that wrote to cable companies and said, effectively, you need to drop Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax because of the editorial decisions that are being made. A Baltimore prosecutor, a Democrat, called for the FCC to go after a local TV station that was exposing the prosecutor's corruption. And so we very clearly see no hesitation to weaponize government process when it comes to those situations. And yet somehow on this issue, it gets fast-tracked.
Yeah, to me, this is a free speech issue, and this is an attack on conservative talk radio. The left, the Democrats, have sought to compete against conservative talk radio, particularly the big hosts. When there was Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, my show, Bongino, others, we're really the targets here. And so what they're trying to do, notice it's before the election, is to try and get this done. So if they lose the election, they still have these 220 stations. And if they win the election, they've created a precedent. Is there anything Congress can do or any litigator can do? I mean, they're obviously, in my view, they're operating ultra-virus. They're operating without any precedent, without any regulatory authority.
Yeah, I mean, look, Congress could step in, but it's difficult. As you know, you need the House, the Senate, and effectively the president. So you got to have a lot of leverage to do that. There is going to be a second bite at this apple. So even under their approach, they have to come back to the FCC within presumably the next 30 or 60 days and run this 3 to 6 month long national security review. So there will be a second bite of the apple here over the next coming months. But it is a challenging situation. You're right. I mean, we're sort of in the midst of this global surge, really, in censorship. And you see the Biden-Harris White House admitting, or effectively admitting, that they've been pressuring social media companies to censor political speech, in my view, in violation of the First Amendment. I mean, we should have a law on the books that says if you're in government, if you're right, left, or center, and you're calling up social media and telling them to suppress posts, the company should be compelled to publicly and quickly disclose it, because this jawboning and the silencing of political speech we're seeing that's accelerated under Biden-Harris, I think is a real problem. There's a lot of talks about threats to democracy, but free speech is the check on authoritarianism. It's democracy's check on authoritarianism. So we have to return to that.
I mean, the idea that unelected 3 Democrat commissioners, what will be a 3-2 vote on this independent agency, which is really supposed to be as objective as possible. But look, I'm not a Pollyanna. I didn't fall off the tuna boat yesterday. I get it. But this is blatant. This is brazen. This is in your face. This is, the election's coming up. We're going to do this whether you like it or not. And it isn't amazing to you, Commissioner, that so much of the mass media just blow it off and completely ignore it. I mean, there's some pockets here and there, but I just told you right now, we just got notice. I'm from Philadelphia. I won't be on that station. Now, I'm not worried about it. I have a podcast or alternatives there that we're going to use, and we, you know, Cumulus Westwood One is a very, very big media corporation, and we have some very interesting initiatives that we're going to deal with in a number of these metropolitan areas. But that's not my point. My point is the idea that a George Soros, a big Democrat, the sugar daddy for the Democrat Party, can muscle his way in, effectively buy the FCC, decide who's going to own what of these 220 stations and who's going to be aired. That's pretty sickening, don't you think?
I think we need to return power back to Congress. You mentioned, obviously the FCC where I work, but there's, hundreds, if not thousands, of this alphabet soup of agencies that are out there, the administrative state. And Democrats have been in charge of the administrative state for 12 of the last 16 years. So much of your daily life, in the life of small businesses, is now governed by these unelected agencies. And we do have a shot here right now. There's some new Supreme Court precedents, getting rid of Chevron. Effectively, that they're getting rid of deference to these agencies and saying, look, the Constitution is pretty straightforward. Congress is the one that's supposed to pass these laws. And right now, the people decided to have a divided Congress. So Congress isn't getting a lot done. And that's the way that people wanted. And yet these agencies, like the one I work at, are churning out thousands and thousands of regulations that disrupt your daily life without people knowing who we are or voting for us. So I think we've got to get the power back to Congress.
In many ways, Commissioner, I think this isn't about building a robust, number of AM radio stations, because AM radio is fighting for its survival right now. I think this is just a way of pushing and silencing voices. And I think technology helps us too, because podcasting is exploding. You don't need a FCC license to be a podcaster. So I think what's happening here, whether it's Soros or other owners or something of that sort, in the end, they're going to destroy their own industry, and they're going to push more and more and more and more people into sort of these independent podcasts and other platforms, don't you think?
I've been at the FCC for almost 12 years, a commissioner for 7. And I can tell you, people with billions and billions of dollars are not investing in local radio stations to try to turn a profit. I wish it were otherwise, but the industry is not kicking off profits. So anybody that's spending that much money in this type of sector either sees something economically that I haven't seen, or their purpose here is not, simply to use these as an investment to make money. There is a different motive at play here.
Mm-hmm. So they're fast-tracking a process that's never been fast-tracked since there's been a process. They're doing it for Soros. He will acquire 220 radio stations that reach 165 million Americans. He will do it through the Soros Management Fund, which includes a significant amount of investment from foreign monies. And they will have control over these stations and these formats. Is that about right?
Yeah, but my guess is that it will, be a final deal and have the reins of those stations in the coming weeks.
Well, it's going to be up to the audience to abandon stations like this, as far as I'm concerned. That's the only way. Mr. Commissioner, I want to thank you very much for what you've done and what you're trying to do, and we'd like to bring you back as this moves into the final stage, Brendan Carr, if that's okay with you.
Yep, always glad to do it. Great to join you.
All right, God bless, and my best to you. There you go, America. Or what's left of America. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The cracks in our economy are widening by the day. We've got a labor market that's cooling faster than expected. Unemployment jumped to the highest since the end of 2021. The market could be in free fall any day as investors panic over a potential recession. Now, some bank stocks are getting hammered as fears of a downturn grow. Even the Fed is talking about rate cuts to prop things up. In uncertain times like these, you need a solid plan for your wealth. That's where gold comes in. It's been the ultimate safe haven for as long as we've used money. And when it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're a top-rated American gold company and can help you protect your hard-earned money. Call Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit and to see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. Don't wait. Call 800-900-8000 today. That's 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. You know what's amazing, America? There's a piece in a left-wing so-called news site called Axios by Alex Thompson. You want to hear this headline? Harris won't say if she'll still back decriminalizing prostitution. Decriminalizing prostitution. Did anybody know she favored decriminalizing prostitution? There's more to this story. Now, I don't know if other hosts have mentioned this. I know it hasn't been mentioned on Fox since I've been watching them all day. But I don't think it's been mentioned anywhere, except in this left-wing website, Axios. And I want to discuss this with you because they circled back and asked her if she still holds that position, and they wouldn't get an answer. They couldn't get an answer from Harris. But doesn't this point out just how extreme she is? Just what a complete radical kook she is? Yes, the left of Bernie Sanders. We never hear that anymore. Bernie Sanders is a Stalinist. He worked at a Stalinist kibbutz in Israel when he was a young little Marxist. To the left of Bernie Sanders, she treated her staff like crap. She had a 92% turnover as vice president. We never hear these things about Kamala and her character and her belief system. All we ever hear is, her surrogates are out there telling us what she believes and what we're supposed to think she believes. Oh, and watch the polls. We'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. By the way, Kamala Harris hopes to ride this abortion issue right into the White House. This is the only thing she really will talk about, and when she talks about it, she lies through her teeth. There will not be a national ban on abortion passed by Congress, whether people want it or not, because it'll be blocked in the Senate. Period. If there was going to be one, there would have been one already. There are things that can be done, of course, but that's not one of them. That's number one. Number two, she's not interested in codifying Roe v. Wade. She's not interested in Roe v. Wade. She's interested in codifying a law they voted on and failed after the Dobbs decision that Schumer put forward that provided no limitations on abortion, that prevented all state regulation, that prevented even parental notification, which 80% of the American people support. If you have a minor child who's pregnant and they're going to get an abortion, the parent wants to know about it. And also did, in fact, legalize infanticide. That is, the aborting of a baby, the killing of a baby right as it's in the birth canal. Now, she acts like these are crazy thoughts and crazy things. That actually happens several thousand times a year. But that's beside the point. The point is she's not interested in codifying Roe. Now, she says she wants to get rid of the filibuster so we can get that codified. Now, let me ask you a question, ladies and gentlemen. So let's say another group of politicians comes in and they say, you know what? We not only don't want to codify it, but we want to have a national law that bans it. So then they can pass their law. And so, number one, it solves nothing. Number two, she's changed her position again. Tom Cotton put out a letter that Harris signed, among others, supporting the filibuster rule. Supporting the filibuster rule. Now she opposes the filibuster. This woman is a chameleon. She'll do anything and say anything as long as she can drag the country to the hardcore Marxist Islamist left. Now, there's a story that's apparently under the radar that I wanted to bring to your attention and move it a little bit more center for us by Axios, a left-wing site, Alex Thompson. Harris won't say if she still backs decriminalizing prostitution. And it says Vice President Harris's campaign is declining to say whether she still supports decriminalizing sex work, a position she took while running for president in 2019. It's among several progressive stances, as they write it, Harris has either abandoned or gone silent on as she's moved toward the center in her abbreviated race for the White House. We've never seen such a corrupt campaign like this. Here's cut 11 from 2019, Kamala Harris on this subject of sex work and decriminalization. Go.
Do you think that sex work ought to be decriminalized?
I think so. I do. When you're talking about consenting adults, I think that, yes, we should really consider
Let's just
that.
stop a second. Consenting adults. Really? Every prostitute is a consenting adult? People are sold into sex slavery. They have pimps. So every prostitute's just an independent actor? I mean, folks, I want you to think about this. Go ahead.
Consensual behavior, as long as no one is being harmed. But at the point that anyone's being harmed or exploited, then I think we have to understand that's in a different manner.
Well, aren't most women being exploited who are prostitutes? This woman, she's for women's rights. She's a champion of women. She wants abortion right to the end, and on and on and on. And everybody else is against women, and she's destroyed women's sports, she and her buddy Biden. And she thinks sex work, that is prostitution, that is people who are not willingly prostitutes in many instances, if not most instances. And is this a kind of behavior we want to promote as a society? Folks, I'm asking you, is this woman sort of a normal presidential candidate? You have women who are being abused, who are being sold into sex slavery, who are being beaten into, well, as long as it's consensual. Well, how do you know that? You sign a contract? Go ahead. That's what we've got. And now you heard that was an interview with The Root. She said, Harris also told The Root that when she was the district attorney for San Francisco, quote, I was advocating then that we need to stop arresting these prostitutes and instead go after the Johns and the pimps because we were criminalizing the women. Well, one of the ways you get to the Johns and the pimps is to arrest the prostitutes, because the Johns and the pimps don't necessarily make themselves known or available. This is so stupid. It's so hard to comprehend that this woman is even close to being the president of the United States. Axios says, yes, but Harris has been inconsistent on the issue. In 2008, more than a decade before she first ran for president, Harris opposed a San Francisco ballot initiative to decriminalize prostitution. So she was against it before she was for it. She said, I think it's completely ridiculous. Just in case there's any ambiguity about my position, she told the New York Times in 2008, it will put a welcome mat out for pimps and prostitutes to come on into San Francisco. And then she changes her mind when she's a senator and decides she wants to run for president. In 2008, she opposed it. The vice president's campaign did not respond to Axios when asked about her current position on sex work, whether it was closer to her 2008 position or her 2019 stance. I told you yesterday, we ought to have a second debate, Kamala versus Kamala. The two faces of Kamala, at least two faces. The campaign declined to make her available for a brief interview. She has done a historically small number of interviews for a presidential candidate. And so what is her position now? We don't know. We have no idea. Now, to me, this is important. Sex slavery is a big issue, and she would tell you, well, I don't support that. Well, of course you don't support that, but if you support decriminalizing prostitution, then you're basically helping those who are involved in the sex trade. You're basically helping the pimps and others who are abusing these women, many of whom are very young and teenagers, are not making independent decisions. I mean, the lies, the dishonesty, whether it's abortion, whether it's this, whether it's the border, whether it's fracking. I mean, how much more are we going to take of this? She was not the elected nominee of the Democrat Party. She lied about Joe Biden and his mental health, and she did it purposely, and she did it right up to the end. She helps to overthrow him. She wasn't an innocent bystander. Now she's lying about her economic policy, some of which she's let out, some of which she's absolutely lying about, or trying to copy Trump. She's a massive economic socialist to the left of Bernie Sanders. She says, I believe in joy and unity in the future. I don't distinguish between Republican and Democrat. 92% staff turnover as vice president. Dropping the F-bomb all the time. Telling interns and others, do not look me in the eyes. This is the real Kamala Harris. People who've worked for her have written about it. There used to be stories about it a year ago. But now that she's the Democrat nominee by default, we don't hear about any of this stuff. It's just happy face, good times, giggly. She's more moderate. And she literally has people at MSNBC and CNN, people at the New York Slimes and the Washington Compost, people at the networks who are running interference for her. The media running interference for her. Good God, this election is so important. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The big wireless carriers want to limit you to two choices when it comes to data, unlimited or unlimited. And guess what? Both are stupidly expensive. So folks, stop overpaying for data you're never going to use. That's like paying for a pot of coffee when you only need a cup, or filling your entire truck bed full of gas when you only need a tank. With Pure Talk, my cell phone company, you get to choose how much data you actually want. Listen to this. For just $25 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data, which is more than enough, plus mobile hotspot. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless and get America's best 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is easy. There's no contract. There's no activation fees. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month when you sign up with Pure Talk. Those of you who missed hour one, I want to strongly encourage you to go to marklevinshow.com, that's the mothership, and go to Audio Rewind. Half hour after the program has ended, you can hear the entire program, but I want you to listen to that first hour. It's very, very important, particularly if you live in my old stalking grounds, the Philadelphia area. It's a very, very important first hour. So it's marklevinshow.com, Audio Rewind. If you did not hear the first hour, I want to encourage you very, very strongly to take a listen to that first hour. You're going to learn information you do not have and you did not know about this entire industry and what's taking place. You know, I have a very, very loyal audience. We conservatives are a tight-knit group. We understand what's happening to the country. And we have a special, almost familial relationship. So you can check it out. And also, don't forget to go to marklevinshow.com, click on Audio Rewind, and select your favorite platform for the Mark Levin Show podcast, or search Mark Levin Show on your favorite podcast platform. But everything is there at marklevinshow.com, marklevin show.com. Again, audio rewind will be up about a half hour after the program. I want you to listen to that first hour all over the country, especially in the city of brotherly love. There's a lot going on in the city, and a lot of it's not good. Continuing where I left off. So Kamala Harris supports decriminalizing prostitution. That was her last position. And as I said, that is exactly what sex traffickers and pimps and other abusers of women want to hear. That's what they want to hear. But now over at the Breitbart, just to show you how extraordinarily radical Kamala Harris is, here's a piece in Breitbart by David Ung. Jane Fonda campaigns for Kamala Harris on goal of slashing fossil fuels by half. Now, I want to ask people in coal, oil, gas producing states, fracking states like Western Pennsylvania and other places, I want to ask you a question. What did Jane Fonda know that we don't know? Didn't Kamala Harris reverse course and say, no, I don't oppose fracking, now I will support it? But you see, she told Jane Fonda, just get me elected. Then we'll do what we want to do, and there's not a damn thing they can do about it. That's what's going on, folks. Hollywood star Jane Fonda is hitting the campaign trail for Kamala Harris right now. Harris Walt's ticket will slash fossil fuels by half in order to address what the actress called climate emergency. Speaking to CBS News on Monday, Fonda put her climate activism front and center while also proudly discussing her role as a Democrat political influencer. Marxist, more like it. I'm really involved this time because of the climate emergency, she told CBS News. Jane Fonda, I hope all you veterans, especially Vietnam vets, are listening to this. I hope all you folks that work with your hands, drilling for oil, fracking, the entire system of creating fuel, getting it, bringing it to the market, because Jane Fonda knows the truth, that Kamala Harris is going to kill your jobs and kill your industry. It's that simple. She believes Harris will make progress on ambitious targets like cutting fossil fuel emissions in half by the end of the decade. Fonda also believes a victory for former President Trump would send the country in the wrong direction by increasing our reliance on fossil fuels. We can't allow this to happen in the United States, not when the future of the planet's at stake. See, these are the oligarch elites of the Democrat Party, much like the Russian oligarch elites. They make a fortune. They're utterly unaffected by these policies. It is the people who work for a living, who live paycheck by paycheck, who have to deal with the consequences of these radical Marxist/socialist ideologues. Jane Fonda is not going to be affected by any of this. You are. You are. Gasoline prices are going to skyrocket like they already have in California. Electricity prices are already skyrocketing. It's going to get worse. You're not going to have charging stations. It's going to be utterly inconvenient, particularly in the far rural areas and in the inner cities. It's not even rational. It's not even logical how this is supposed to work. There's no infrastructure for all this electricity. And to create electricity, you actually need fossil fuels. So we're dealing with ideologues. So Jane Fonda is actively campaigning and fundraising for Kamala Harris. What does she know that we don't know? Why is the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, very happy after he meets with Kamala Harris in a secret meeting? What does he know that we don't know? Why are AOC and Tlaib and Omar and Bernie Sanders not just silent about Kamala Harris, but enthusiastic supporters of Kamala Harris? Because suddenly she's going to deport illegal aliens? Because suddenly she's going to secure the border? Because suddenly she's going to support the cops and the military? Folks, wake up! Wake up, folks. Fonda's pushing for climate activism through her own political action committee, which is designed to promote down-ballot candidates and initiatives. Her PAC is backing 100 candidates across multiple states, including the battleground states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona. Fonda championed the role of left-wing celebrity influencers like herself. I champion myself. It's like the head of this group, CARE, which is a Hamas front group. Niwad, or whatever the hell the fool's name is, who celebrated October 7th in so many words, who's always been a little shy about condemning 9/11, but we know exactly who he is, because the FBI was taping at the Marriott Hotel right next to the Philadelphia International Airport a meeting in the 1990s held by Hamas activists. That's right. And CARE was created in that meeting. They call themselves the largest Muslim civil rights organization. You know, much like Hamas, they just claim to represent everybody. They don't represent all the Muslims in America. They take a vote or something. Well, he announced the other day that they anticipate getting at some point soon 40 members of the House of Representatives who support the CARE agenda. That is a Hamas front group. 40 seats they seek or they hope to get. And they're capable of doing it because the Democrat Party has not put down this anti-Semitism, this Islamism, this Marxism. And you have a fusion of the radical left, like the Jane Fondas of the world, and these Marxists and others, and the Islamists. I've been talking about this for a long time now, and I won't stop, no matter what they try to do to me. I'll be right back. The big wireless carriers want to limit you to two choices when it comes to data, unlimited or unlimited. And guess what? Both are stupidly expensive. So folks, stop overpaying for data you're never going to use. That's like paying for a pot of coffee when you only need a cup, or filling your entire truck bed full of gas when you only need a tank. With Pure Talk, my cell phone company, you get to choose how much data you actually want. Listen to this. For just $25 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data, which is more than enough, plus mobile hotspot. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless and get America's best 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is easy. There's no contract. There's no activation fees. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month when you sign up with Pure Talk.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
You know, folks, we have a lot of Senate races going on here that are tight or getting tighter. And the media don't want you to believe it. The media want Kamala Harris as president. Now think about this. Tim Walz as vice president. They want the Democrats to control the Senate under Schumer. And they want the Democrats to control the House under Hakeem Jeffries. And so they belittle, they criticize, they try to humiliate our candidates, every damn one of them. And one of the candidates who's suffered a lot as a result of these attacks has been our friend Kari Lake. She's running for the Senate in Arizona, and she's running against an absolute left-wing lunatic. Kari Lake, how are you, my friend?
We are working hard. We're holding up, and we're out there. We're talking to voters every day. And I think what you just said is absolutely right. You just described the nightmarish situation that we're in, and it would be the demise of this great nation that we all love so much. And so we're working really hard. We want to make sure every voter knows what Ruben Gallego's about. Unfortunately, he's spending a fortune. I think the number he and his friends have spent so far is $75 million in ads. God. It's insane. And, I don't know if you've ever seen that show. You probably haven't, Mark, but maybe some of your listeners have, Extreme Makeover, where they take a total dud, try to turn him into the greatest thing since sliced bread. And he's doing an extreme makeover on his radical leftist, past. He's trying to act like he's a moderate. He's the one who drummed out of office a moderate Democrat named Kyrsten Sinema, and is now pushing for a radical agenda. He supports mass amnesty. His plan, his radical plan for immigration, is amnesty for millions of illegals who poured in during this invasion. He supports sanctuary cities that, as we're seeing right now, are allowing violent illegal immigrants to roam the streets. He wants to defund ICE, and it actually has threatened violence against ICE agents who do their job in deporting people who are criminals who are here. And he wants to allow all of these people who've poured in to get amnesty and be able to vote in our elections. It will be the end of our country. That's how important it is. And they're outspending us, and I need people out there. I know in this terrible economy that my opponent has rubber stamped because he's been for all of these disastrous economic decisions that Harris and Sleepy Joe have pushed through, and he's been right there cheering him on along the way. It's getting tough to afford anything, but we need help in this race. We are in striking distance. Some of the polls show us tied. Some show me down a point. My internal polling shows us up a bit. Regardless, we are really close to winning this, but we need help. If you can afford $5 or $10, if you go to KariLake.com, it would be much appreciated so that we can get on air and warn people who they're dealing with Ruben Gallego.
You know, Kari Lake, I've been watching these commercials here in Virginia and Florida, too, and other places. The Democrats are spending, it's got to be over $1 billion now, just lying through their teeth about everything, lying about themselves, lying about their opponents, lying about abortion, lying about the border, lying about the economy. It's the most massive propaganda operation between their Democrat Party billionaire oligarchs and their in-kind free corporate media that I've ever seen in my life. And I've been watching this a very, very long time.
It's terrible. They don't care what they say. They have no scruples. They're not honest in those ads. And the sad thing is, you know, if you look at research on these ads, it'll show that voters, sometimes older senior citizens, will believe those ads. I think the younger generation is kind of on to the attack ads. But what they're doing in our state is carpet bombing the airwaves with ads trying to make Ruben Gallego look like a cross between Mr. Rogers and G.I. Joe, when in fact he is to the left of the squad. He's to the left of AOC. He's voted with the Biden-Harris agenda 100% of the time. AOC hasn't even done that. Bernie Sanders hasn't even done that. And so he's trying to paint himself now as some sort of a moderate. He's forced sanctuary cities. He's marched and defunded the police rallies and marches. And he's actually wanting to get rid of qualified immunity that protects our police officers, that they can do their job without the risk of losing everything if they make a human mistake. For men and women in law enforcement, without that, they can't do their job. Without that, we won't have safe streets. You know, you talked about some of the dangers with the open border and these Venezuelan gangs that have gotten so brazen in places like Colorado and across the country. We were dealing with this very early on, Mark, with these Chilean, what they call dinner time bandits, who were breaking into hundreds of homes around Arizona at dinner time, robbing people out of everything, all of their valuables, and escaping into the desert. One home after another in suburban neighborhoods right in the city, and it's leaving people in our state not feeling safe in their own home. And if we don't do something about this border, my opponent won't do it. He's open borders all the way, and that's why it's important we elect President Trump and get in there and vote for every Republican senator who's running. And if you can help out, make a donation to help us make sure we can get our ads on the air and compete with these guys on the airwaves, because they've got tens of millions of dollars from people like George Soros and all the usual suspects.
That's KariLake.com, K-A-R-I Lake.com, KariLake.com. Mr. Producer, put it on all my social sites, please. And anything you can spare, ladies and gentlemen. Every one of these races, absolutely crucial. This is a winnable race. Ignore the media, ignore all of these people, or you're going to drive yourself nuts. Wouldn't you think by now, Kari Lake, that most reasonable people, American citizens, would realize that if they want a secure border, if they want law and order, if they don't want Venezuelan gangs and MS-13 and the rest of it in the country, that precisely the wrong vote is the vote for the Democrat Party, for a guy who is in the House, he wants to run in the Senate, who's as radical as they come. I mean, I understand that they're spending all this money, but this guy has a record, and he's been around a long time. and he's been on the wrong side. He's been on the side of the illegal aliens against American citizens. Don't you, the people of Arizona? Is this not digesting, setting in with them?
Well, what I'm seeing on the ground, and I talk to more Arizonans every single day, every week than anybody in the country, is that the people are completely fed up. They're worried. They're worried if we don't secure the border, we're not going to have a country. They're worried about the crime that's being committed, the migrant crime on American citizens. Our hospitals are being overrun. Some of them have shut down near the border because they are treating people who are here illegally who don't pay the bill. Hospitals can't stay afloat if the bills aren't being paid. When a hospital in a small border community is shut down, there's no other option. They don't have 3 and 4 hospitals. They have one. And we've watched this happen already in Arizona, where a hospital was shut down because it was overrun with illegals. Our schools are feeling the impact. This is the reason our rent has gone up so much. I had to educate a liberal reporter recently who tried to tell me that the illegal immigration crisis pouring across our border isn't affecting the price of things like rent. And I said, where do you suppose the 18 million people pouring in are living? We're now having to compete with already a scarcity in housing, especially in places like Arizona, for people who are here illegally. It's a basic supply and demand. You know, when you have too many people, not enough housing, the price goes up. And so we're seeing, that kind of thing happening here in Arizona. We just have to look at his voting record. He's voted in favor of sanctuary cities. He's voted for every open border policy that's been presented. Just remember back when President Trump, in his first term, said we have to secure this border, and Washington, D.C. fought against him. My opponent called it a dumb, stupid border wall and said he would never, ever, ever give a penny to fund that border wall. We now know, Mark, that border wall is one of the least expensive ways to secure our country, and we need to get it built ASAP from the Gulf Coast to the Pacific Ocean. I will vote to make that happen. Ruben Gallego will push against that every step of the way. I'm going to push back against the cartels, and he's going to be a puppet for the cartels. Mm-hmm. We've already seen that in the way he's voted.
KariLake.com, Kari Lake.com. There are other issues too, right? I mean, the inflation, the economy of the Harris-Biden regime has hit Arizona especially hard, hasn't it?
It's one of the worst affected states in the whole country. As a matter of fact, when you look at just housing prices, rent prices, the top 10 cities where rent has shot up the most since, Biden and Harris and Ruben Gallego have just unleashed this horrifying, destructive agenda. 3 of those top 10 cities are here in Arizona: Tucson, Phoenix, and Mesa. This used to be an affordable state, Mark. People would come here because they love the weather, they love the sunshine, and they love the affordability of it. And now it's becoming unaffordable, too expensive. And this is all caused by, things like the inflation. They call it Inflation Reduction Act. It's the Inflation Production Act because it's done nothing except make inflation shoot up to a more than 40-year high. That's why we can't afford things like rent and gasoline and groceries. So we need to vote these people out. They don't know what they're doing. We had it good under President Trump. He understands the economy. He understands how to make sure that we're creating a healthy economy, bringing lots of jobs to Americans, and keeping these companies from offshoring their manufacturing. We're going to be bringing it back under President Trump. I will be supportive of that. And when we start bringing these jobs back and manufacturing back and these companies back, we're going to have better paying jobs. That's more revenue. Somebody said, how much can we cut from the federal government? Well, we can sure cut a lot of garbage out of the federal government. But we can't just cut our way out of it. We've got to grow our way out of it. And I remember clearly just a few years ago when President Trump grew that economy in such a healthy way that it was the best economy I'd seen in my 50-plus years. I want to get back to that. Whether you love President Trump or you don't, I happen to love the guy. He gave us a great economy, and it didn't matter what your thoughts were on him. It mattered was, could you feed your family? Did you have a little extra money left over at the end of the week to maybe do something fun, maybe go out to dinner once in a while and take your family out? Now people are having to go to food banks. I talked to a man who works at a food bank. He said, you would not believe the line of people from all walks of life who are coming to the food bank to get a box of food to get themselves through the week. He said, these are not people that we used to see at the food banks. And now seniors are there, young people are showing up, people who have a steady job that used to get them by and give them extra at the end of the week, and now they can't even get through the end of the week.
What a great candidate, Kari Lake. KariLake.com, KariLake.com. Check out her site. Help her any way you can. Anywhere in the country, as a matter of fact. They're overwhelming her, trying to swamp her with money. This is what they're doing with all our candidates. This is why I allow Kari Lake to speak and other candidates to speak, because they're not what the media say they are. They try to create a caricature. These are really good conservatives, many of whom do not have a lifelong career in politics. Kari Lake does not. She just wants to help her state and help the country. I encourage you folks. Obviously, I'm endorsing Kari Lake. I encourage you folks to vote for in Arizona, KariLake.com. And good luck to you, my friend. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, and thank you for all you do. We appreciate you.
God bless you. You too. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The big wireless carriers want to limit you to two choices when it comes to data, unlimited or unlimited. And guess what? Both are stupidly expensive. So folks, stop overpaying for data you're never going to use. That's like paying for a pot of coffee when you only need a cup, or filling your entire truck bed full of gas when you only need a tank. With Pure Talk, my cell phone company, you get to choose how much data you actually want. Listen to this. For just $25 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data, which is more than enough, plus mobile hotspot. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless and get America's best 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is easy. There's no contract. There's no activation fees. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month when you sign up with Pure Talk. Next hour, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a lot in the hour. We've got Lee Zeldin, our buddy, former representative, New York, former gubernatorial candidate, but I want to dig deeply into this Venezuelan gang issue because this is an international gang operation. It's worldwide, and now it's in our country. And the New York Post has done an unbelievable job of exposing this. But it's not just New York now, it's throughout the country. But New York is ground zero for so much, including this. And also, I'm going to make the point that the Harris-Biden-Blinken administration have not only been colluding with, have not only appeased the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran, but their acts are acts of treason at this point. Funding Iran, protecting Iran, secret information passed to Iran, and that, God willing, Donald Trump's elected president, there needs to be a full-scale criminal investigation into this Iranian Harris-Biden-Blinken regime collusion, because I believe it has reached criminal levels, and I'm going to prove it to you, give you my opinion, as well as the Venezuela gang situation and more. Don't forget, on MarkLevinShow.com, the mothership, never forget, that's the big site where we have everything. I want you to check it out, the first hour. Check out the first hour on MarkLevinShow.com, Radio Rewind, 30 minutes after the end of the program, particularly those of you in the WPHT Philadelphia area, but all over the country. Very, very, very important information. Please check it out, and it'll be there. And, of course, you can always listen to our podcast, MarkLevinShow.com, click on Audio Rewind, and select your favorite platform. We're everywhere. Nobody can stop us. Nobody can silence us. We are literally everywhere, and that's the way we intend to keep it. When we come back, it sure looks like this administration is colluding with Iran, and worse. You won't want to miss it. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Yes, Kamala Harris is rope-a-doping. I think I've been saying that for 2 months now, both on this platform and on Blaze and certainly on Fox. It sure looks like this administration is colluding with Iran. Lawmaker calls for probe into State Department following Robert Malley revelations. Folks, listen to this. How is it that an American administration has provided tens of billions of dollars to an Iranian regime which slaughters its own people, brutalizes its own women, murders gay people, or anybody who disagrees with it, that is building nuclear weapons, that is spending tens of millions of dollars to eviscerate the Jewish people in the Middle East, that is trying to take over the Middle East, whether it's Yemen, Lebanon, Iraq, you name it. Now they're trying to topple the king of Jordan. What gives? Well, we know that Blinken has been a boyhood friend with a guy by the name of Robert Malley. We know that Blinken's father was very close to George Soros. George Soros is behind so much, isn't he? Behind so much. In fact, his father and mother ran a foundation that Soros chaired and funded in Hungary. Many of you may not have known that, but it's true. But what do you make of this, folks? And so, let me see if I can pull this back up. Of course not. Well, here's the bottom line. This guy Malley has been under investigation by federal law enforcement for passing information that he obviously wasn't supposed to pass to the Iranian regime. He also had members of his staff who were accused of passing information to the foreign minister of the Iranian regime. And it appears, as best as we can tell, it also appears that the Biden hierarchy covered this up from Congress as long as they possibly could. And it's Representative Banks, Jim Banks, a good man running for governor of Indiana now, he's the one that's saying, it sure looks like collusion to me. Well, it looks like it to me too, Mr. Banks. In fact, it looks worse than collusion to me. This looks like treason. The Iranians have attacked American ships. The Iranians have attacked American military personnel. We've done virtually nothing in response. Why? Why is it that we're supposed to hate Netanyahu and not the Iranian regime? Why? What's going on there, too? Vice President, here, let me read this to you. 1 second. I think I got it finally. Well, I guess not. Doesn't really matter. All right, thanks. But the whole system's frozen, so I'll just do it. I can do it myself. I don't even need the article. Robert Malley was the envoy chosen by Blinken and appointed, therefore, by Biden to negotiate the nuclear deal when Biden came in and Harris came in with the Iranians. And what they basically did is bought them time. Bought them time to build their nuclear weapon. Even the United Nations is banging the pots and pans and saying, look, guys, they're literally weeks away from having 3 nuclear weapons. Our administration has done nothing about it except fund it. Our administration has done nothing about it except withhold arms from Israel. Our administration has done nothing about it but withhold 2,000-pound bombs from Israel. They say, because we don't want them using them on Gaza. That's not why they need 2,000-pound bombs. They need 2,000-pound bombs to take out their nuclear site in Iran. Do you want to know why Iran has not attacked Israel right now, even though Hezbollah, a terrorist organization that killed hundreds of American Marines, remember them, and embassy personnel? Yeah, them. because Iran knows that Israel will use the opportunity to attack their nuclear weapons site. That's why. They know the United States will not. 30% of our Navy is in the Middle East, in and around the Middle East. We've got jet fighters of every kind. We've got armaments of every kind. We've got a nuclear sub there. We've got 2 carrier groups there. It's just unbelievable what we have, and they've done nothing. Iran, via the Houthis, are blocking the Red Sea, so we can't get our ships through there, and nobody else can. And now Israel, little Israel, all on its own, 6 million Jews, is fighting Hezbollah. They've been fighting Hamas. They're fighting now. Iraq is shooting missiles. The Houthis are shooting missiles. And we blame Netanyahu. They're shooting missiles into Israel, and Israel's supposed to just stand for it. So what is going on here, ladies and gentlemen, that we would not only appease the Iranians, fund them, lift restrictions on them for the selling of oil and so forth, but we would literally collude with them, that we would have leakers at the highest levels of the Harris-Biden administration, worse than the Alger Hiss case, because of the number of them and the significance of it. What is going on here with this administration and the Iranians threatening to and trying to assassinate Donald Trump, Pompeo, Bolton, O'Neill, others, we're told? This is not normal. This is not normal for the United States. This is not normal for any country to respond by providing billions of dollars to a regime that conducts itself this way. And so it is my view, strongly, that should Donald Trump get elected president, God willing, and should the Republicans hold the House and take the Senate, now these don't have to happen simultaneously, that there are massive investigations. Let's start on the criminal side. There needs to be a massive criminal investigation, and I mean this, of the Department of State, of the National Security Council, of that whole apparatus, to include top political officials appointed by this administration. I'm not saying they're necessarily defendants. I said there needs to be an investigation. Emails need to be looked at, text messages, phone messages, all documents, all electronics. Because I think what's happening here is the greatest sabotage of America and American foreign policy in American history. And I think it's taking place from within. It's no damn conspiracy. You explain this to me. You explain it to me if I'm wrong. And if the Republicans control the House and the Senate, they ought to have a joint congressional hearing, staffed up with staffers who know what they're doing, with national security backgrounds, with investigative backgrounds, brought in specially like they were for, say, Watergate or Iran-Contra or whatever it is, to have a full government-wide investigation of what exactly occurred here. The Middle East is on fire. The Jews are fighting for their survival. All the attacks from this administration are on the elected Israeli government and on Netanyahu, who they sought to topple, for God's sakes. I can assure you, if Kamala Harris is elected president, this will not only continue, it'll be worse. Because the Harris-Biden, Biden-Harris, Blinken-Sullivan, that entire regime is pro-Iran. Pro-Iran. And anti-Israel. You have 30% of our Navy sitting there, not even helping our ally while our ally's under attack. There has to be an explanation for this. And it can't be good. They used to call this treason. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
All right. It's a pleasure to have former gubernatorial candidate and Representative Lee Zeldin, our good friend from New York. Lee Zeldin, the New York Post has done an exemplary job of covering this Venezuelan gang problem that has really taken root in New York, in the metropolitan area, but also around the country, Chicago, even little towns in Aurora, Colorado, and so forth. This is an international gang. This is a bloodthirsty, brutal, violent gang. It now has a foothold in our country, a foothold in our cities, and even in our towns. It wasn't even here, to the best of my knowledge, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Open borders, no deportation. We're literally flying people into this country from Venezuela, putting them on the path to citizenship. This insanity that's going on at the same time we're attacking our cops and undermining their authority. Do you think we're going to get out of this?
It's going to be up to voters November 5th, and you made an important observation how quickly this happened. There were Democrat leaders in this country who were openly encouraging not just border policies, but also a message to people who were not even living in the U.S. to come here. I mean, we heard it from Kathy Hochul. It was an issue during our gubernatorial race, December of 2021, encouraging people to come illegally into the United States. So Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, they come into office, they start implementing policies on day one, stopping construction of the border wall, ramping up catch and release, getting rid of Remain in Mexico, getting rid of Title 42, attacking Customs and Border Patrol. And you have these people coming illegally taking advantage of laws. So now they come in. They get rewards, goodies, incentives for coming in. They could go to places like New York City, which has both sanctuary city and sanctuary state protections. In New York City, they actually passed a law that would be giving these people the right to vote, to give hundreds of thousands of non-citizens the right to vote. They get free money, they get free housing, free education, free health care, and they take advantage of the laws that are on the books where the local law enforcement is not able to communicate, coordinate with ICE. And we're talking guns, drugs, sex trafficking. I mean, this is as bad as it gets, and it happens so quickly out of nowhere.
And the New York Post writes how New York City's sanctuary status allows bloodthirsty migrant gangs, this Venezuela gang, to thrive in Big Apple shelters. So they're brutalizing American citizens. They're brutalizing other migrants. They're taking control of these shelters. They're taking control of these neighborhoods. And it did happen so fast. And so I think to myself, Lee Zeldin, do you hear any Democrats talking about reversing course in any serious way, whether they're in New York City or Chicago or anywhere? Do you hear them talking about reversing course?
Not really. I mean, there was some politics that they were playing around what was a bad border bill that they were trying to get through.
Well, that border
Congress.
bill allowed 1.8 million illegal aliens in, and we're not even talking about gotaways, among other things. So that wouldn't have stopped anything.
Amen. But they were using, like we saw in New York 3, this congressional district where there was a special election in February. Tom Suozzi, who ended up winning, the Democrat in that race, was using rhetoric, was using messaging about getting stronger on the border. But where the rubber meets the road, as you just pointed out, if you look at the actual policy that they're pushing, this isn't policy that actually fixes it. Are you calling on places like Albany to start passing laws to protect law-abiding New Yorkers? Are you calling to get rid of sanctuary city and sanctuary state policies? How about prosecutors who refuse to prosecute, like Alvin Bragg? What about not supporting our men and women in law enforcement because they're being hung out to dry, unable to do their job, where they know that there's wrongdoing happening? And as you point out in this great New York Post story that just came out, law enforcement knows where the problem is, but they're unable to tackle it. It's wild.
And now we have situations, and Donald Trump brings this up and he's attacked, but he's right. Many of these Venezuelan gangs and other gangs, they wind up in the inner city. They wind up not exclusively, but significantly in black communities. And so I just sit here and I think, here's another great, again, New York Post article. And it's Chicago gangbangers rage against newly arrived Venezuelan migrants as this gang, the city is going to go up in flames. Now we have domestic gangs of American citizens who are facing off against these Venezuelan migrant gangs. Have you ever heard anything so crazy?
President Trump was talking about this at his rally last night in western Pennsylvania, in Indiana, Pennsylvania. And President Trump was tackling the challenge of MS-13 head-on successfully on Long Island. As you pointed out, that criminal activity was going on based in places like there's a place called Brentwood and Central Islip in Suffolk County, New York. Mm-hmm. It's heavily black and Hispanic population, and that's where the people are finding roots. And you end up with a school system that ends up getting eroded, low graduation rates, low attendance rates, high transiency rates, poor performing schools. I remember going to visit a school district there. I was in a sixth grade, where every single classroom in that sixth grade had over 40 kids per class. So in order for a kid to go to the restroom, 3-4 other kids would have to stand up to let that kid go through. The consequences of the open border policies, in a way, is the least of it. When you add this criminal activity on top of it, they utilize a black market, and they are victimizing people who are innocent. The sex trafficking is some of the very worst stories I ever heard in life. And the recruitment is of junior high school kids. I mean, they're 13, 14 years old getting recruited off of the playground to join MS-13. President Trump tackled it head on. All sorts of people are getting locked up left and right. The whole challenge was getting reversed. It was amazing. But now it's like paling in comparison to the challenge that'll be in front of President Trump now, after the Biden-Harris administration let this Venezuelan gang in.
It seems to me, Lee Zeldin, God forbid if the Democrats win the presidency and the vice presidency, and we have two extraordinarily radical individuals running for president and vice president, Harris and Walz, that this will be permanent. It might be permanent anyway, because deportation isn't that simple. It gets complicated with all these judicial rulings and so forth, but I'm extraordinarily concerned that this country will never be the same again. It'll be dangerous. It'll be third world. You've got illegal immigrants, including these gang members, getting welfare benefits that many people in these communities are not getting. And I want to follow up with you on this when we return. I'm with Lee Zeldin, the Venezuelan gang problem in New York, Chicago, and the rest of the country, in the spectacular series of stories from the New York Post. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Denali, the Great One.
The Great One.
And you can call in now, 877-381-3811.
We're here with our friend Lee Zeldin talking about the consequences of an open border. You know, Lee Zeldin, I can't think of a single positive consequence of an open border, from fentanyl, from the drug cartels making a fortune, from the sex trafficking. 320,000 minors are missing, and the Harris-Biden administration don't know where they are. The complete lack of assimilation into our culture, these gangs, the crime, the violence. And yet this goes on and on and on, and the media seem to cover for this. So let me ask you a question. You made the point, you're right, that really the only way to turn it around is this election, if it can be turned around. So I'm going to ask you what I get asked all the time. What is your sense of this election? What is your sense of the presidential election? How do you think this is going, or do you have no idea?
I'm in Wisconsin right now, today and tomorrow, doing 3 stops per day as part of the Trump Van's campaign bus tour. Yesterday, I was with President Trump in western Pennsylvania. I did a roundtable with the president.
I saw you there on the stage.
Yeah, we were first in Smithton, and we were focused on CCP influence over U.S. agriculture.
Communist China.
And then big rally, the Chinese Communist Party, and then we were in Indiana and Pennsylvania for President Trump's rally with more people waiting outside than we're able to get inside. The energy is amazing. The support is clearly there. What's wild to me is how there are low propensity voters, people who vote sometimes, not always, and no propensity voters, the people who could vote but they don't at all, who are looking at November 5th, Election Day, as a game day decision of whether or not they vote. 100% President Trump will go into this election with enough support to win. The question is whether or not everyone shows up to actually vote for him. The amount of people who are gun owners who don't vote, evangelicals who don't vote, veterans who don't vote, it's wild. Where I am in Wisconsin right now, there were many multiples of gun owners who did not vote in 2020, way beyond the margin of victory for Joe Biden in 2020. So you ask me, how am I feeling? There are many things that I would say that are better than 2020. However, I always campaign like I'm behind. And any poll that says we're up 2, let's just operate with the mentality that we're down 2. Everyone out there, your vote absolutely does count. If everyone has the mentality that they shouldn't vote, then you're guaranteeing that every race up and down the ballot goes the wrong way. And everything that we are discussing now, everything that you always discuss on air that needs to get tackled by this country, none of it's going to head in the right direction. So we need everyone participating, too big to rig. That's the only way to win this, and have that race called November 5th.
I think folks that you're talking about need to understand this isn't about politics. This is about whether we live in an America in a lifestyle that we want, in a way that we want, or whether we lose our country to this radical ideology, and we lose our identity, and we lose our history and our culture and our economic system, because all of that is on the ballot, is it not?
It's all on the ballot, and what's so telling to me, President Trump wants to talk about his 4-year record when he was in office. Kamala Harris wants to make believe the last 3.5 years haven't happened. When she says her values haven't changed, we should believe her. When Bernie Sanders says that Kamala Harris is just being pragmatic to win an election, believe him. Kamala Harris has shown that she is somebody who is against fracking. She compares the ICE to the KKK. She was bailing out people, burning down Minneapolis. We have already been talking about the open border policies. The list goes on of where she's on the wrong side of these issues. Any type of flip-flop that shows up at 6 p.m. on a Friday evening by someone on her team trying to claim to some friendly reporter that suddenly she has the position that's polling better, I don't believe any of it. We wake up the day after the election. Harris and Walz are getting ready, starting in transition to take over. They are the furthest left major party nominee any of us can remember in our lifetimes, and there have been plenty of far left nominees in the past. So it is all on the line. And what is so telling about what we were just discussing with the open border is the fact that they don't just have policies that allow these gang members to come in. They then enact policies that will give away tax dollars, that give free education, free healthcare, free money, and that list goes on. And then when they break laws and victimize Americans, including, as you just pointed out with the fentanyl, killing Americans, they cover for these people. As a matter of fact, in places like Washington, D.C. and New York City, and soon maybe coming to a blue city or state near you, they want to give them the right to vote.
Wouldn't you agree if we had at least a relatively honest media that was serious about presenting news rather than pseudo-events, rather than partisan Democrat politics, that the country would be in such far better shape, that the American people would be so better informed, that the media have had a role in the deterioration of this society, have they not?
The media should just inform the public on facts and let the American public for themselves decide what they believe is best for them, their family, their state, their community, their country. The media can't do that, though, because the voters who are trying to make their minds up, and they still haven't yet, they're talking about their top issues It's the economy. It's our border. It's safety on our streets. It's energy dominance and independence. It's a strong and effective foreign policy. President Trump was ending foreign wars, not starting new ones. It's about having a military that's not a woke social experiment, instead focused on being America's greatest fighting force. We have a situation on our hands where the media can't just shoot straight across the board with the public to allow the public to make an informed, educated judgment decision for themselves, because then it's a landslide that they'll lose because they're so invested. You know, President Trump pointed out last night's rally, the media will probably benefit from higher ratings for it, but that's not how so many of these people in the media are thinking. There's a level of derangement beyond that that's very personal, and they fear the public thinking for themselves. They want the power to be able to tell people what they believe, how they should think, and how they vote.
We only have a few minutes left, Lee Zeldin. You served in the United States military. You were one of two, I think, Jewish members of the House of Representatives, not Republican members of the House of Representatives. What happens to the state of Israel and our alliance with Israel if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are elected president and vice president of the United States?
There will be more daylight between the United States and Israel at best. At worst, Israel ceases to exist. I mean, you just look at what Kamala Harris is saying coming out of a meeting with Bibi, trying to put pressure on Israel to accept a ceasefire, even though Hamas is not at the table. Hamas didn't agree to a ceasefire. Hamas has pledged to wage jihad against Israel, wiping Israel away from the river to the sea. Hamas says that a Palestinian who negotiates with Israeli is not a real Palestinian. And you don't see Kamala Harris talking about it, instead putting pressure on Israel, especially for domestic politics, because she wants to win Michigan, and she's pandering to people who aren't even with her. You ask Tim Walz, what should the Harris-Walz administration do? What are you planning with regards to Israel and Gaza? Walz makes no mention of Hamas. Walz makes no mention of American hostages. They are telling us exactly where they are on this issue, and it's scary. It's far left, and it's pandering, and it doesn't add up to Jews being any safer, Jewish college students and faculty especially being protected from what they're encountering right now. Our streets aren't going to become any safer, and what we see from encampments to flag burning to vandalism and all sorts of buildings getting taken over and other crimes being committed, it's all going to go in the wrong direction. These are people who refuse to lead these cancerous elements within their ranks. Instead, they pander to the pro-Hamas sympathizers, and they're taking over the Democratic Party. They're not leading it.
Here we have a vice president running for president. She hasn't said a damn thing about Hezbollah in the last 72 hours. Nothing. She hasn't said a word of support for Israel. She hasn't said a thing. Not a thing. And I noticed, I talked about this earlier in the program, all these left-wingers who back her, all these Islamists, the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, and those folks and so forth, they're all quiet, they're all happy. Tlaib has said horrific things. She's basically thrown in with Hezbollah. I mean, here we have an Islamist in the United States House of Representatives. She's not the only one. The media doesn't go up to Harris and say, do you condemn her? What about what she said? Harris is getting 100% free ride. And I just hope the American people are not bamboozled, that there's enough out there who say, I'm not going to vote for somebody who's hiding from me. I mean, what we know of her is horrendous. And yet she is running a campaign that is anti-democratic, that is anti anything that America has experienced in any presidential election. But I do want to end with this, Lee Zeldin. I think there should be a second debate. I think Kamala Harris should debate Kamala Harris, because the first Kamala Harris seems to be a little different than the second Kamala Harris. So she ought to debate herself, and we could all watch and try and figure out what the hell she's all about, even though you and I know. Lee Zeldin, thank you. Keep up the great work, my friend.
Thanks, Mark.
Take care of yourself. He's a good man. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Judge Eileen Cannon. Remember her, handled the documents case. Courageous, brilliant judge who ruled that Jack Smith is an unconstitutional rogue prosecutor. She will be handling the second assassination attempt case with this guy Ruff. Fantastic. Let's go to WLS in Chicago, our wonderful affiliate there. Dave, how are you, sir?
Hey, Mark. I think when it's all said and done, you're going to go down in history as one of the most important people in the history of the United States.
Why is that?
There, I said it. Because you're just so strong, you're so true, you're so pure, you're so dedicated, you're so in love with the country and the Constitution and the law. You're just a terrific, wonderful man that's very important to this country.
You're very, very kind. This industry, this business is under attack. It's under attack by Soros. It's under attack by the FCC. As we discussed in the first hour, and I hope everybody in the audience will go to marklevinshow.com, audio rewind, and listen to the first hour of the program. Some of it is preempted here and there. Some of it is tape delayed here and there, but you can always find it there. You can always find it on my podcast, marklevinshow.com. But, Dave, I want to thank you a lot. Chicago, my God, what a fantastic city, and look what's happening to it. You got a nut job for a mayor. He's even fighting with the city council, which is filled with leftists. You've got massive presence of Venezuelan gangs there now. It's just so horrible what's happening to these fantastic, beautiful, big cities that made America, the industrial heartland of America, Chicago, for God's sakes. And you just have to scratch your head. And they keep electing Democrats and Democrats and Democrats. It's almost a sickness, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, you know who I think's behind the whole thing, Mark?
Who's that?
The guy that sent over that big pallet of hundreds of thousands of millions of dollar bills with no legitimate legal right to do that. You know who I'm talking about, our buddy Barry. He's behind the whole thing. I think he's been running the country even when Trump was there.
Obama?
All the stuff he put in.
Well, he started it. There's no question about it. He deported all these people. Let me tell you something. The big influx of people from the Middle East really occurred in the last 2 or 3 years of his second term, his administration. So, the entire destruction of the immigration system is what we have here is, as I talked about before, revolution by immigration, and it's occurring right in front of our eyes. Dave, I want to thank you, all our fantastic friends in Chicago, WLS country. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, our brothers and sisters fighting in Ukraine, our brothers and sisters in Israel. We have your back. You're doing fantastic, even though Biden does not. See you tomorrow, folks.